That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney, or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. Today, I have for you Book 2 in the Dark Nest Trilogy by Troy Denning, The Unseen Queen. Don't like this art, but, you know, it is what it is. But you know what is cool? Leia. Again, I'm going to say pacing. This is a lot easier, though, than, like, Force Heretic Trilogy. It's only, like, 330 pages, and there's only a couple parts that drag. But still, it's just overall more entertaining for several reasons than the Force Heretic Trilogy was. Just to make an apt comparison as to another, people say that, even people that love New Jedi Order tend to say that Force Heretic is one of the weakest, and this is much stronger than that. But it's 1 year later, since the last book. A lot of things are going on. The Killiks, the Dark Nest, there's pirates and stuff stealing Tibani gas and other such equipment for some mysterious reason. So Jaina and a lot of the young Jedi Knights, I guess they're not really young anymore, they're adults, but, I always remember them as the young Jedi Knights, are, out in the frontiers trying to stop it. And it becomes a whole other thing because, the last novel could kind of be read as a standalone, but this continues that and shows that things are not over because Alema's still around, Lomi Plow's still around, so the Dark Nest threat is far from over. At the same time, we have a lot of conflict within the Jedi Order itself and the Galactic Alliance. Because again, sure, you had peacefulness at the end of the Unifying Force and stuff. But this book even makes abundantly clear, like, when Chief Omos was having the Jedi help him defeat the Vong, yeah, everything was perfect because it was all one goal-minded. Again, World War II is an extreme, but, like, it's an extreme for a reason because it's, like, the only war in history where it's pretty much black and white. Like, any other war, Afghanistan, think about Vietnam, like, those are so much more gray in terms of what was actually going on and whether it was necessary, like, there's arguments that could be made for all that stuff, and I'm not going to get into that here because it's real life. I'm just saying, World War II, Nazis, and people that worked with them, Allied powers, good guys, bad guys, black and white, that's why, it's so easy to use them as bad guys and things, because they're, like, the bad guy in fiction. Not in, I mean, they're real, but, I mean, like, when somebody makes a movie or something, Indiana Jones, Nazis. Why? Because it's easy. Because you don't have to humanize them. They're Nazis. It's the same thing with, freaking, why the Wolfenstein games is so popular. You got the two franchises right there. You got Doom, where all you do is kill demons, which are evil, and then you have Wolfenstein, where you play as BJ Blazkowicz, and you kill Nazis, because you don't have to feel bad about it. They're Nazis. So, so that's kind of the same thing where, of course there's more nuance with the Vong, they weren't completely evil or whatever, but it's still a thing of, okay, well, Chief Omos has the Jedi working for him, and they're helping him defeat the Vong. Everything's perfect, but now there's peace. So the Jedi serve the Force, not the Galactic Alliance. Issues arise with Cal Omos. So, stuff with that going on. Jaina and Zach are still, they're not really anymore, but they're still slightly part of, like, the Joiners in terms of, like, sometimes Jaina and Zach will have, like, the same thought. So there's still some problems there. And then, of course, there's the continuing very, very side plot of Luke finally getting to learn about the past through R2D2. Contrived? Absolutely. Important to the plot? Not really. I mean, they try to make it fit into the plot, but it really doesn't matter. But it is cool to get those prequel connections, and so that Luke and Leia can have those answers resolved. So that is cool. Um, and then, of course, we have the whole Jason arc, which, depending on your point of view and your opinions, it's going to be phenomenal or you're going to hate it. But it's so good. And I'll get into it mostly in spoilers because I don't want to ruin it for you if you haven't read it because it is good. And people who argue against it, they are free to their personal opinion, but they act like they're objectively right when they just aren't. So we'll prove to them why today. But yeah, so a lot of fun. The Killick crisis continues to be a problem, and they have to resolve it. And there's also two other characters that were in the last one and continue to be a lot of fun, in my opinion, anyway. Tarfang and June. I really like those new characters that they brought in. I also just want to mention how much more violent these books are, which may not be everyone's cup of tea. I know that when Meg Reviews did her review, she was a bit skeptical and a bit not enjoying of that. Like Leia gets in a fight, she gets very like black eyes and bruised up, and Luke does too. So a lot of people, Troy Denning likes to injure people. Like he wants to make his fights visceral and violent, and it really comes across in these books, Um, but like I said, the biggest issue is probably pacing. And again, the Killick crisis is not the most interesting thing in the world. But again, right, like you just had the new Jedi Order, so you're not gonna do that again, right? So if you're gonna tell a story afterwards, like even if it wasn't Troy Denning, you're gonna go smaller. It's just what you're gonna do because you can't go bigger. So again, I mean, it will have ramifications if this conflict gets larger. Like, it will cause strains with the Jedi and the Galactic Alliance. It will also cause issues with, quadrants of the galaxy, but it's not going to be world ending. It's not going to destroy the cosmos or put people in reign of terror for years to come. Like, it would be a problem, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. A very Bantam era type of threat. And so I don't mind that much. And it's only a trilogy. We're almost done. So I don't mind, if the Killicks were 19 books long, hell yeah, I'd want to cut my nuts off and die. But it's only 3 books, so it's fine. And then it's over. You don't really deal with them anymore. Um, but again, I still do think, the Supernatural Encounters doesn't really involve the Killicks much, other than the fact that we learn in Supernatural Encounters that they were one of the first races, like, to ever exist, which just automatically makes it a little bit more interesting. And the fact that they play such an integral role with characters down the line, which I mean, the novels themselves do that with Fate of the Jedi and stuff, but to get a little bit more into that, and the Darkness itself, because there was a Darkness back during the ancient times in Supernatural Encounters. It just wasn't Lomi Plow and Alema Ra or these dark beings. It was other people, other beings that were making the Killicks dark and stuff. So you have that continuity. And of course, we have the Gorog, which is like the Queen Evil Darkness. And that name has more weight now due to Supernatural Encounters. So Supernatural Encounters has really elevated this book. I mean, it hasn't like significantly changed anything, but it has made it a little bit more interesting to digest and appreciate. So overall, without getting into spoilers, because I have a lot to talk about, but I don't really want to tell you non-spoiler wise, and I don't know exactly what to tell you non-spoiler wise. That's about the gist of that. Okay. Um, and if you liked the last one, or you were at least thought the last one was decent, then yes, I recommend this one. I want to get into spoilers though, because I need to prove everybody wrong, and that requires talking about the plot of the book in detail. So we're gonna get to that. But just to say, just to piss everybody off, Jason's arc, one of my favorite parts of this whole book. I have some minor hiccups with some things in this book. We'll get into that. This book isn't perfect. I'll dive into it when we get to it. But overall, I'm having a good time with it, and um, it's been very vindicating to me to reread this. Oh, I should also mention, just real quick, Leia, again, Leia, through this entire trilogy, is becoming more of a Jedi. She has embraced her adopted father's life for most of her life, which was to be a politician, to be in the Senate. But now, in her latter years, she is finally learning how to become a Jedi like her biological father. And so to see Leia, it took far too long. It should not have taken this long. She didn't even do this in New Jedi Order. The missed opportunities. But she's finally accepting that role for herself. And that is so cool to me. It's one of the best additions to the post New Jedi Order era is the fact that Leia embraces that. I love that. Because theoretically she could be just as powerful as Luke. She just started too late. But still, it is super awesome to finally see Leia pick up that mantle and see her be awesome because I always knew she could be. Besides a couple times she fought a Hutt or whatever else she did, and then Dark Empire. But she gets moments to shine here, and her and Saba Sabatine again. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Maybe Saba Sabatine is a freaking Ahsoka, though she shows she's far less of that than Ahsoka ever was. But I love Saba so much. Saba is so much fun. I love Saba. Oh my God, I cannot express how much I enjoy the sections with Saba. Saba is so fun to read. But yeah, so that's another addition that is just phenomenal about this book. I'm getting spoilers. If you don't want that, get out. I'll be back in a second. Alrighty, on the spoilers. So, um, as I said, 1 year later, we have this whole thing with Fizz that's messing with the Killiks. It's kind of interesting, but not really. Um, the anything goes Luke. Um, so I have a much more nuanced take than I think the people who disagree with me. I almost said hate. They probably do hate me too, but that's okay. The people who disagree with me, um, and then I think Troy Denning isn't even on the same page as me. I think I'm just in this unique tunnel vision area where I just have a much more nuanced take than everybody has. It's easy. They either take the one aisle or Troy Denning takes the other, and I'm like straight down the middle. Um, but the interpretation I got, Troy Denning makes it sound like, Luke kind of allows anything and everything now due to the fact that they serve the Force. There is no light or dark side. So like on that front, me and Troy are like on the same page. But at the same time, it's you, right? If you're a good person. So I don't feel like Luke would necessarily change his values or his morals in any way, shape, or form in order to accomplish this new Force enlightenment. Like he would just not be so iffy about like using force lightning or something. It'd be like it's just a tool to be used, and that's exactly how Jason kind of deals with a lot of things with, darker aspects of power because it's just a tool. It's not dark sided. Again, I can't be a bad guy because I'm a good guy. My heart is good. I can't go bad. So you can use anything and everything, but except that we do know that the more you use that, the more issues arise. So, like Anakin using Force choke a lot during the Clone Wars, that only made him more susceptible. It's like doing drugs, like you pop that pill once, you take that heroin shot once, you do that crystal meth, whatever drug you want to use for this analogy. Yeah, that first time, it's, maybe you can quit after that, but you do it a few more times, then you can't just quit because now it's consuming you. So, you know, but so I disagree with some of how Troy tries to make it be portrayed with this new Force enlightenment. The overall broad strokes I think I agree with, but the execution of how he goes about explaining how others besides Jason goes about it, a little off to me. But overall, so our sexuality is the next point. Actually, hold on a second. I'm sorry. Sorry, I forgot to mention it's my birthday, so people are messaging me. Um, but sexuality. So yeah, there's some sexuality. Like a Lemarar is in a very skin tight suit that's kind of like stockings, where it's kind of see through, but not enough to see anything. I get it. Okay, like, but then again, Leia in Episode 6. Need I say more? Or Padme Episode 2, literally every outfit she wore, not to mention the freaking tiger thing. Sorry, I'm bad with names. Brennan would know automatically. Alana later gets gets a pet one. Rips her shirt, right? And it just magically gives her a crop top. Was that necessary? Does that add to the plot? No. It was because it looked good. That's the reason for it. And I get it. Like, you're like, it's for children. It's for children. But you're okay looking at the Vong mutilate themselves. Like, obviously, we went in a more mature direction. Do I necessarily appreciate the sexuality? Not really. I don't really need that. You know, if I wanted that, it's 2024. I can look at other things if I really wanted to. I don't need a book for that, you know. But is it a big hindrance to the story? Is it a big important part of the story? No, and it works for Lemma for the simple fact that Troy Denning has always wrote her to be this sexual character. She has been like this since her inception. Now, if they were doing this with other characters that you already know and love, like Tino Ka or Tahiri, people are going to get into that. That's for the next series. We'll dive into that. If they're doing this consistently and often with, like, I don't know, Leia, you know, Leia, if she does it with Han, is fine because they're married. But you get my point. Like, if this is something like just like out of the blue with like with the character established, then okay. But Dilemma has always been this way, so it's not really an issue for me for her to be portrayed that way. But yes, Troy Denning is very sexual. I, it's just his cup of tea. I wouldn't necessarily write that way, but he likes to do that a bit. Everybody has their niche, everybody has their vices, and that is Troy Dennings, I've noticed. If you find that as an issue, fair enough. But I think most people who criticize this era are a little inconsistent with their views because, I try to be as objective and as consistent with myself as possible. It's like, if I don't like this for this reason, then I try to also be like, well, I don't like this for the same reason. Unless there's added context or stuff that makes it okay, But, a couple examples that you of people being sexual. Uh, uh, Delilah Blue from the Legacy comics, like um, literally all of Darth Talon. So there's other examples of this, but it's only wrong when this one thing does it. That's where you have a problem. But it's not the story. But yeah, so I just want to mention it because I know people have big issues with it for some reason. Um, Luke gets to see another scene from episode 3, and it's the one of the famous ones, the memeable one, where Anakin Skywalker goes, "I want more, but I know I shouldn't." And so it was cool that he got to see that scene. He got to learn, like, definitively that Padme was his mom. There's also a slight issue here that I wanted to address, which is that Elemarar tries to, because we learn that Lomi Plow kind of hides in the dark nest and hides from force perception by doubt. Any sort of doubt. So atheists are screwed if Lomi Plow comes to kill you. Um, but Alema tries to sow doubt into Luke about Mara. But he's like, maybe she killed your mother. Now, of course, Luke doesn't know anything about his mother. She could have lived long into the dark times. Maybe she died a year before Luke went on his adventures. Like, he doesn't know. So, like, that's not necessarily an issue. But when you really think about it, like, she was maybe a baby during episode 3, and then, like how early do you think that Mara was killing people? Because I don't think she really started doing that until she was probably like 18, maybe a little before that. But she wasn't. She was a child. But I mean, I guess it's possible that if you're Luke and you don't know anything about your mom, that she lived all the way to like a little bit before episode 4, and then Mara killed her. But you just think with that love and that bond that they've had for this time, there would be no doubt. So I'm with you there. That's an issue. Not like a huge issue, but it's a little of annoying thing to do. I mean, of course, Luke trusts her; it's all fine. But it's just doubting your spouse at all It's just a little odd to me, but it's okay. Admiral Sov. Do you remember Admiral Sov? Well, he dies in a paragraph, like as an afterthought. Like somebody's mentioning, oh yeah, he just died. So that sucks for him. Um, I also want to mention now that Ben's 9, and if Jason and Jaina were about 21 at the end of uh, Unifying Force, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Jason and Jaina were 27 in the last book, and now it's a year later, so they're probably 28 now. So 2 years away from 30. Just want to mention that. And Ben's now 9 years old, so he's a bit older now. One of my favorite aspects of this is that Jason and Ben are now master and apprentice. And again, this is that you got continued. I would love to see like a Jude Watson, if not Jude Watson herself, but a Jude Watson like young adult book series. Maybe only 5 books or 6. You know, like the first Young Jedi Knights run. Though if we could go more, I'm down for it. If somebody is creative enough to make that many stories, but there is another 5-year gap before Legacy of the Force. So what stories could be told with Jason and Ben before that time? I would love to see it. The big stuff. Alana. Alana Solo. So Alana is born in this book. Tinoka slowed her through the Force. She slowed her pregnancy, so that way it wouldn't be exactly 9 months since you saw Jason, because then people connect the dots back to him. But she slowed down her pregnancy so no one would know. Now people try to claim this is just the prequels. They are so stupid and so retarded. I'm sorry if that offends you. Do you not know how to read? Do you not pay attention? Do you not pay attention to the own series that you claim to love so much, which is New Jedi Order? Because here is 2 reasons losers don't know and understand why Jason and the weakness thing with the whole thing here. So James Luceno, remember? You love James Luceno, right? You love James Luceno, right? You love James Luceno, right? Well, in that duology, right, what happens? Anakin uses Centerpoint Station, and of course it's Thraken's fault, but he accidentally butchers a whole bunch of Hapan people, right? And it even says in that book, and is reaffirmed in other books, like Elaine Cunningham's novel, that the Hapan people don't like solos. They hate them. Doesn't matter which one, they hate them because of what Anakin Solo did, whether by accident or not. So there's one reason why Tinoka wouldn't want others to know that Jason was the father. Secondly, everybody wants Tinoka's job. Nobody likes Tinoka. They want her gone. So if they learn that she has a child, how much easier would it become to show her weakness, to take away her child and kill her, hold her hostage, because then she's under the will of whoever has her kid. There's 2 very good reasons to not tell anybody. And even in this book, Jason says, I would have told Jaina, but she's still under the control a little bit of the Dark Nest, or more so that she's still a bit of a joiner because her and Zach's minds are linked. And while he may trust Jaina, he doesn't trust Zach nearly as much as he trusts Jaina. But since Jaina is compromised, he won't tell her. So there are multiple reasons, multiple good reasons why Jason's not going to tell anybody that he is a father of Tinoka's kid. Is it similar to the prequels? Maybe. You can make that analogy. It's like poetry. It rhymes, but is it an exact rip-off copycat? No. You are wrong and you are not paying attention because you are purposely disingenuous and you want to hate something. It's okay to dislike something, but be honest with integrity. And when you're not, that's a problem. Because it's clear as day if you read the text in context. But people don't, because they want to be angry. And isn't it fun to be angry? Apparently so. But I've proven you wrong, time and time and time again. Moving on, let's get to another point. So, Jason is a father. Oh my god. Now, here's another thing. All of you, most of you that don't like this era, are not fathers. This is where people start to hate. Because the first book, Jason, outside of a few minor things, is basically just unifying force Jason. All this time I thought I'd make this huge retcon of a story to fix it. There is no problem. Now, I still want to write a story in between that to make it even more nuanced and more interesting and more tragic, his fall from grace, but nothing is out of the blue here. He is exactly, minus a few things, because it's been 6 years, the same character in the first Darkness book as he is at the end of the Unifying Force. The transition, the change comes here, mainly when he learns that he is a father, when he has a child. Now, of course, Faith the Jedi would add further nuance by dwelling in a little bit of what he learned about during his sojourn. And I want to expand upon that even more with supernatural encounters and stuff by making my own short story or novel or whatever that takes place in between Unifying Force and Darkness to further flesh that out. But regardless, the true transition to being something else other than a hero, that transition comes into knowing that he is a father and the lengths he would go to protect what he loves. His whole entire mind, his whole motivation, his whole drive immediately flips the moment he realizes that he has had a child. And when you see that child in your arms, you would do anything for that child. And I think most parents can attest to this. Go to hell and back if it meant you could save your child. And you know Han would, if he was a Force user. Sorry. Han's definitely going dark side if he was a Force user. Luckily, he's not. But we'll get more into that as we move forward. Gilead is out of retirement, which will be important for the next series, but was in retirement. He's gotten taken out now due to everything going on. Omos's development. So Omos was always like the helpful politician. He's the not Palpatine, right? And he was super useful during New Jedi Order, and he's not a bad guy, right? And he helped get the job done, and peace was reigned. But what happens after peace? No one thinks about that, right? So he has certain goals and wants and desires for the Galactic Alliance. But those wants and desires aren't always going to align with the Jedi Order, and hence where problems arise. And he's not a villain, but he's also not above being like, no, you do work for me. I pay your bills. So yes, you do owe me. Your religion's great, but you owe me a service because I'm paying your bills, so you are going to help me. And that's arguably fair enough. But still, he is not the perfect, amazing person, He's flawed just like the rest of us. And he was great and amazing and fantastic during wartime, but wartime politics and governance is not the same as peacetime. It requires a different standard. It requires a different approach, something that, as we're seeing, Cal Omos lacks. Jason's dark side and Ben's desperation. So, here's the first real big turning point. Ben is still kind of connected to this darkness, to the Gorog. And so he's kind of freaking out as the Darkness is trying to kill Tinoka's child. And Ben is not helping the situation. And Jason's not. Everything's happening at once. This is all in the same scene, in the same hour. He's learned that he's a father, that He's learned that he's a father, and now that the darkness is trying to hurt the ones he loves, he learns all this in a very short span of time, and then Ben's freaking out, and everything's going on. There's things trying to attack him. Everything's happening all at once. So Jason simply pulls Ben to his hand and says, "Sleep." And Ben falls asleep. Now, that was very violent. It was very spur of the moment because he didn't have much time to think. But again, you have to remember where Jason is at, right? He tells Tina Call, like, yeah, he got a few bruises, but he'll be all right. And she's like, that's not the point. But again, what was the unifying force? There is no light or dark side. There is only you. If you fall, it is because you are bad, inherently. That is what Verger was teaching. That is what Lucino reiterates. That is what Troy Denning reiterates. He just goes about explaining it and showing it slightly differently, or about the ramifications of said thing, which I don't necessarily agree with incompletely. But this is what Jason believes. But again, I've gone over this time and time again. The dark side is actually a thing that will corrupt you. This is just a truth of the setting that Star Wars takes place in. If you don't agree with it, then you don't agree with Star Wars. Make your own franchise. But as far as Star Wars is concerned, it does corrupt. It is not just you. This is a new thing trying to be developed at the end of New Jedi Order to be this new philosophy and by the end of the franchise and basically change the status quo and the understanding of the Force as we know it. But just because they wanted to change it doesn't make it so. That's not how it is in the expanded universe. It just isn't. People have different interpretations of the Force, obviously. Different writers have different opinions. But the overall consistency throughout the expanded universe is no, the dark side is a real thing. So, but Jason doesn't believe that. So he can do anything and everything. He's a good person. Now, of course, he doesn't want to slaughter and kill everyone before using the dark side. But here he did. He used it. Doesn't feel bad about it because it's just a tool. It's just something you use. But it was a very dark and sudden thing to do. He didn't hurt Ben, or that wasn't his intention. He simply needed him to stop. So he put him to sleep. But it leads to being willing to do more things. It's a slippery slope. So again, what's the next thing that happens? Jason and T'Chum and visions. So Jason sees T'Chum. Tinukal wants Jason to bring T'Chum to trial because T'Chum was working with the Darkness. Jason's a father now, though. That means his first priority comes to his family, to his child. And T'Chum, she's not going to give up because she hasn't given up. She's been the same character with no growth, no character development, the same consistently horrible person since Courtship of Princess Leia, and long before that. She's never changed. She never will change. As long as T'Chum exists, my child is not safe. He doesn't kill her, but he basically turns her into a vegetable. And there is another big turning point. See, these two decisions right here are going to further him down to that path. It's the same thing, essentially, as Anakin Skywalker in his anger killing the Tusken Raiders. Like, sure, he's not a villain, right? He's still technically a good guy at that point. He just made a terrible mistake. But that was kind of like the rippling effect. That was the biggest contributor to bringing him to the dark side. Outside of everything else, like, sure, there's stuff in the Clone Wars and everything like that, but that was the big turning point. It was his mother's loss, and then the next step was worrying about his wife dying. Those are the two catalysts to really change him. To ultimately, like, there was other little minor things that gradually took him down that path, but those are the two big ones. So T'Chum's death is one of the bigger ones for Jason. But again, there's no dark side, so it doesn't matter. Moving on. Leia as a novice, as a Jedi, is really interesting, because she's a part of the Jedi Council meetings and everything, right? But she's so used to being a politician for 20 years and people respecting her and obeying her. But here, like, they value her opinion and her insight, but at the same time, she has to realize, like, I can't just, like, be demanding things here. Like, I'm the newbie here. And it's just interesting to see her in that role. Alema shows Han and Luke the Jedi Temple slaughter of the younglings. Which is never a fun thing to watch. But it is interesting in this little section that Han makes sure that Luke is okay, just showing their good friendship, and also recognizing what clone troopers are. I mean, we have that comic from Rebellion where Luke actually worked with a clone trooper because he was still alive. But outside of that, Han was 10 or 11 during Episode 3, so he would have known about the clone troopers. So, of course, Ben came with Jason, so he knew about the baby. And Chinooka made him promise not to tell anyone. But Jason wanted to double down and make sure. So he gives Ben a human memory wipe, which is kind of insane to think about. He just basically erases the memory from Ben's mind, which again, not inherently dark, but clearly he's being willing to do more evasive and kind of intrusive things to people. But again, this is all happening after he found out that he had a daughter. That was his big catalyst, was finding out that he had that. Because a year ago he didn't. But now he knows that he does. So that changes his entire perspective on what he needs to do. And then having a vision of never-ending war. Sure, Jason's all about peace. He wants peace. But again, he had a vision of never-ending war. He never even got that type of vision with the Vong. He knows what war was like. He experienced it. He lived it. He lost people. He lost his uncle and his brother to the war. Why would he want another one? So yeah, of course, he's going to have motivation to not want it to start. Especially not with his daughter in the world now. To me, it makes sense. Everything about this makes sense for the subtle and shift in his character. It's not like he's a villain. It's not like he's going, I'm going to murder the Killicks. I'm going to murder the Chiss ascendancy. Everyone's going to die. I'm pure evil. No. He wants to prevent war. Now, if the Killicks have to be quelled by the Chiss, then they have to. It's not that I want to. They used to be an innocent species. But Raynar and Lomi and Lemma, I've ruined them. I've corrupted them. Jason and Jaina's relationship is severed because they do this mission that Jason recommends doing, and he goes above their heads. So now Jason and Jaina's relationship will never be the same. One of the more clever parts is that there's a bunch of statues in all these Galactic Alliance ships, and it turns out there's a bunch of the little dark bugs on them. So they're kind of controlling the Galactic Alliance. But of course, Leia finds out and fixes it. Leia versus Lemon round 2. It's fun. I like seeing Leia get to throw down. Also, very sad in hindsight. But Mara tells Ben, I'm not raising Ben alone. You won't die on me. You certainly won't be raising Ben alone. Yeah. And that's basically it. Obviously, the conflict is still around. The Killicks are still around. They need to figure everything out by the next book. How will that go? We'll find out. But that's pretty much my thoughts. I love Jason's arc, though. I can't lie. And I'm sitting here, trying to understand, the gripes and everything. And, I kind of get it. But at the same time, it works in the story. Nothing about it doesn't make sense to me. It still seems like Unifying Force Jason has had a change in priority due mostly to finding out that he had a kid. That's the biggest contributing factor here. Can I flesh that out more in a story that takes place before Darkness? Sure. But I think Darkness is a sufficient story in between the two to explain Jason Legacy of the Force. I think it works fine. If you want further development, sure, I'll write it. I don't care. But people acted like it was nope, just completely different. And reading it in context, it just isn't. You're just wrong. You just don't like the direction, and that's okay. But be honest and just say, no, it's fine, but I don't like it personally. I want Jason to be this. Because that's what you're doing. You're being an author who's going, I want Jason to be one thing, but he became another thing. Therefore, no, actually, it's just a contradiction to his character. No, it isn't. It's not. You just don't like it. That's okay. But be honest and don't lie and say that it's a actual problem with the narrative, because if you actually read it in context, it isn't. You just personally don't like it, and that's okay. But let's be consistent and honest here. Anyway, so overall, I had a lot of fun with it. It's a fun story, not the best or anything. This entire trilogy is not the greatest thing ever, but it is certainly interesting and fun, and there's enough different plot lines here to keep me interested, even if it does drag at times. So those are overall my thoughts. Next, we'll finish with the Swarm War, I think it's called, and then we'll move on to some fan fictions and a proper review of Supernatural Encounters, and then my second favorite series next to New Jedi Order, Legacy of the Force. So next time, guys, may the Force be with you.